Welcome to Narrative Nook Audio Tales, where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. Harvey paused as he looked at the leaving duo with a half-smile as he simply said, "Yes, she's a junior in school." Mr. Rogers Sr. continued to ask, I forgot to ask Mr. Harvey, that young lady that came with you earlier." When Harvey attended banquets like this, he would bring Snow with him from time to time, but now he had no mood for banal exchanges, so he said softly, "Mr. Rogers Sr., that's my own private matter." Guessing that Jared and Nicole were already long gone by this time and sensing the impatience in Harvey, Mr. Rogers Sr. smiled. "You are right, Master Harvey." At this moment, Mr. Wyance seemed to have keenly noticed something. As he looked at the grinning Mr. Rogers Sr., he asked, "Mr. Rogers Sr., did you say the girl was named Riddle?" Ever since Nicole arrived, Mr. Rogers Sr. felt that his chest was much relieved. He was no longer that temperamental as he said slowly, "Yes. She's a Riddle, a very beautiful young lady, and I could not believe that she actually is." As he said that, Mr. Rogers Sr. seemed to realize something as he stopped talking. Yet, Mr. Wyance had already managed to guess Nicole's identity. "She is the one I was looking for," he said to himself. She was right here, right there before him, and he did not know. Realizing that he had missed the chance to speak with Nicole, he lost all his appetite. He respectfully got up and wanted to see if he could catch up to Nicole. Mr. Rogers Sr. was startled for a second, and a deep thought appeared in his eyes. Who was Nicole? She had only just stayed for a minute, and how did she take all these people away with her? He wondered. Mr. Rogers Sr. called out to Sean. "Sean, go and call your brothers here." Sean acknowledged as he ran over to call Jalen and Christopher over. Jalen was entertaining guests at that time and walked over with a confused look. "Father, what's the matter?" Mr. Rogers Sr. was pissed off when he saw the latter's foolish look. "What's the matter? Hold this fort." Seeing the Rogerses in a mess, Damien and Miley originally wanted to chase after Nicole to question her, but after struggling for a few seconds, the two of them decided to stay in the banquet. After all the dignitaries of the imperial capital are gathered here. If they can get on with one or two, they will already be worth the trip. As for Nicole, they will have plenty of time to question her once she goes back to the Riddle family home. Nicole and Jared walked out of the manor, and Max had already driven the car out. Jared then looked at her expressionless eye as he gently raised his eyebrow. "Getting in." Nicole recalled the last time he used such a tone to ask her to get into the car, and a strange look appeared in her eyes, seemingly wondering where he was going to take her. Seeing her expression, Jared could immediately tell what she was thinking as he sniggered. "I'll take you back to school, don't worry." Nicole gave him a glance before getting into the car. The car was very fast, and its bodyline was beautiful. Even Nicole, a motorcycle enthusiast, had to admit that it was a good car. Jared noticed that she was looking outside, leaving only half of her beautiful face for him to look at. He then said plainly, "Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" Nicole turned to look at him and said seriously, "Someone asked me to go to Mr. Rogers Sr.'s banquet. I didn't know you'd be there." He looked at her bright eyes for a few seconds as if trying to gauge the credibility of her words. Nicole did not look away as her pair of eyes looking at him was not that frigid. Instead, it was like a calm lake, beautiful and enchanting. Jared looked away and said, "If there's something like this in the future, I'll take you along." When he heard that, Max, who was driving, gave Jared a surprised glance. His boss had never attended a banquet with a female companion before. However, when he recalled his boss' not-so-closeness toward the ladies seemed useless against Nicole, he was relieved. Jared then casually continued, "The girl sitting beside me today is Mr. Rogers Sr.'s granddaughter. Today is, after all, his birthday banquet. I was giving him face, so I did not chase her away." Nicole nodded when she heard that as she looked at him. Max could see from the rear mirror the confusion in Nicole's eyes, seemingly not understanding why Jared was telling her that. Seeing this, Jared swept a cold glance over, and Max immediately looked away. Jared looked at Nicole's emotionless eyes. The warmth in his heart slowly cooled as a chill appeared in his eyes as he looked on at this seemingly heartless woman as he hissed, "Fine, Nicole, you win." After dropping Nicole off at her school, the black car drove away directly. Nicole looked at the car and fell into a rare deep thought. In fact, when she entered the banquet hall and saw a beautiful girl by Jared's side, she actually felt a little uncomfortable. Yet she could not grasp what this feeling was. Looking at her watch, it was almost 9 o'clock in the evening. She did not dwell on it as she turned toward her school and walked off. It was already dark, and there were not many people in school right now. So, she just casually strolled as she took out her phone and sent a message. Mission complete. The other side quickly replied with an okay, and nothing else. When Nicole saw Mr. Rogers Sr. today, he was very pale, and his cardiopulmonary functions were poor too. Going by the older generations, it was as if something was sapping his vitality. She had casually pressed against his shoulder and was actually looking for a nerve point. Aside from helping with his circulation, she could also tell what the problem roughly was. Recalling Sean's strange expression back then, her eyes narrowed slightly as he seemed to know something about the old man's condition. However, this was the Rogers family's affair. She had no right to interfere. It was now up to whether Christo Rogers could unravel her present and listen to himself. Thinking of this, Nicole arrived at the entrance of the dormitory. She was just about to go in when a hand grabbed her shoulder. She frowned a little as she turned around and grabbed it, wanting to pull off a back toss. Yet the person behind her was very familiar with this move, and when Nicole used her strength, he stood still as if he was ready for it and used the momentum to pull Nicole into his arm. Nicole's eyes turned chilly as she applied force to her feet and tried to spin away to pull a distance as she lashed a kick out. Her attack was fast and powerful as she did not hold back. Judging from the person's skill, he was very likely not a student but someone trained in martial arts. Her opponent seemed to know Nicole's strength well, and to avoid the kick, he immediately let her hands go as he darted backward, causing the kick to miss. In that brief exchange, Nicole had achieved what she wanted. As she looked over coldly, a look of shock flashed across her eyes. The person was looking downwards, seemingly entranced at her hand. He finally caught her, even though it was only for a few seconds. A deep look gradually appeared in his eyes. Even though it was just a few seconds, it could be a few minutes, a few hours in the future. Does that not mean that he could hold on to her forever and ever? He then looked up, his expression was wholly creepy. Nicole started at him and frowned. She did not expect this at all. It was actually Harvey. Thinking of his earlier behavior, a cold glint mashed past Nicole's face. Harvey Ellison, did you do that on purpose? Harvey saw her looking at him. Her eyes were bright, like a snow plane under a bright sun. It was everything most immaculate, and all that was reflected alongside him in her eyes. He could not help but snigger. Yes, I did this on purpose. He looked up at her, a scorching light raging in his eyes. Nicole, can you tell me, what do I need to do for you to willingly allow yourself to fall into my grasp? Nicole looked at him now and saw that he had seemingly shed his warm outer skin as he was radiating a danger that was beyond words. Thinking of his question, she looked impassively at Harvey. The thought of me falling into your grasp is itself delusional. I ain't belong to anyone, and it is impossible for me to fall into anyone's grasp. When Harvey heard this, it was as if he had heard the greatest joke ever. How many people had wanted his favor only for him to refuse them, yet Nicole seemed to be born to spurn him. That made him unable to control the gaze he placed on her, yet he had no way to obtain her. The light in his eyes flickered as he finally let out a smile before saying softly, "Understood." Nicole looked at his departing silhouette, her eyes somewhat impassive. She suddenly thought of what Jared said earlier. After slowly chewing through the words, she seemed to taste something different. Early next morning, Nicole went for her morning training as usual and noticed that Harvey did not hinder her. She instead ran into him on the track. He was wearing a white tracksuit with a hairband tying his hair up. He looked unlike his usual style, but it was particularly handsome. Many girls were taking photos as they whispered among themselves with admiration in their eyes. Seeing Nicole coming over, he smiled as he waved at her. "Nicole, over here." Nicole looked at him with an impassive face as she turned around and left. Harvey seemed to have expected this and continued running without much reaction as the smile on his face remained. A few girls were cursing Nicole for not knowing her place, and Harvey stopped as he looked at them coldly. "Don't let me hear that ever again." Those girls had never seen him being so cold before and were so scared they burst into tears, nodding as they promised to never repeat that again. Only then did Harvey look away as he turned toward the direction Nicole had left, a thoughtful look appearing in his eyes. A benevolent hunter would capture his prey using the method the prey liked. And so, he would. After coming back from her training, Nicole felt particularly irritated. Do I need to train like this every morning if Harvey shows up? The reason she refused to make contact with Harvey was that she felt that it was troublesome, but now, it seemed like not making contact was equally troublesome. She looked at the sun as she inexplicably recalled what Jared said yesterday. What did he mean by "you win"? When Nicole was on the way to the classroom, she was still thinking about it. When she arrived, Bradley was already there and was reading intently. Lulu was not around, probably being called by the teacher to get the study materials. June was seated there memorizing Esperian vocabulary, and when she saw Nicole, she smiled at her. When Nicole saw her, a smile too appeared in her eyes. She then went to her seat, and just as she was about to pull out her exercise questions, a voice came from behind her. Nicole, what's your relationship with Christo Rogers? Christo Rogers? Nicole thought for a bit and only remembered that he was the same Mr. Rogers Sr. who was the host of yesterday's birthday banquet. The person asking her that was Gary. Nicole did not turn around and said, nothing. Gary looked firmly at her back. His brother told him yesterday that he saw Nicole at the banquet. He did not believe it at first, but he then heard Mr. Rogers Sr. himself lead her into the banquet. When Gary thought of it, he frowned. Mr. Rogers Sr.'s attitude toward Nicole yesterday did not look like there was nothing between them. Yet, when he used all sorts of hacking techniques, he could not get anything about Nicole at all, and Gary felt a little miffed. He dared not say how good his computer skills were, but he was definitely at the level of a pro hacker. Finding out someone's identity was a simple matter, and it was impossible for Nicole to hide her identity under his tracking. But since Nicole refused to say anything, Gary could do nothing. However, his gaze toward Nicole now bore a little more meaning to it. Vivian saw the interaction between Gary and Nicole, and she bit her lips. Gary was asking Nicole about her relationship with Mr. Rogers Sr. Her parents had gone to the banquet yesterday and said that Mr. Rogers Sr. personally received a very beautiful girl. But due to the distance, they could not hear who it was. Since Gary was asking Nicole, it was very likely that the girl they spoke of yesterday was Nicole. So, the reason she could run rampant in school was because of her relationship with the Rogers family? Vivian looked at Nicole with a touch of disdain in her eyes. Who knows what kind of relationship Nicole has with those old coots? She glanced at Nicole again one last time. Her brother, Sammy, had also warned her not to provoke Nicole. Not only did her brother not side with her, but instead, he defended Nicole in every single way. How could she live that down? Vivian noticed that Gary's eyes were affixed to Nicole, and he did not even notice Ms. Emerson had walked into class. That made her even angrier. After class, Nicole headed to the cafeteria to eat with Lulu. There were many people still in the cafeteria, and after getting their order and finally finding an empty spot, they were pushed away by a group of girls as they sat on the seats. Nicole frowned a little, and seeing the group with their gangster girl look, Lulu tugged at her, motioning for her to walk away and not confront them. That caused Nicole and Lulu to wait for a good while for an empty table. Nicole frowned, and she did not want to give up. Just as she was about to step forward, a lane opened in the crowd. Harvey nodded in acknowledgement to the people around him as he walked over. Seeing the situation at Nicole's table, he frowned a little as he walked over and asked, "What's going on?" He did not look at Nicole but instead asked Lulu, who was standing beside her. Being looked at by Harvey like that, Lulu could not hold it in and told him everything that had happened earlier. Hearing this, the light in Harvey's eyes dimmed as he walked to the few gangster girls and knocked on the table as he said, "Girls, seating in the cafeteria is first come, first serve. If you did not come first, then please don't take the seats." When the girls saw him, they blushed as they fidgeted while looking at Harvey, saying, "Harvey, we did this because we saw Nicole not respecting you." When he heard that, the cold glint in his eyes disappeared, but he said even more gently, "Nicole did not disrespect me. You've misunderstood. I don't need you girls to speak out for me, but thank you regardless. So, can you girls get up and give the seats to them?" The few girls nodded, but one of them reluctantly said, "Harvey, why are you so nice to Nicole? She's a bad person, and she isn't worth your attention." Harvey turned and looked at Nicole as he smiled and said, "Don't you all know the reason already?" "Don't they all know? What do you mean?" The girls looked at each other and recalled the video of Harvey confessing to Nicole. Was that real? The few of them turned pale. They had never expected Harvey to say something like that. Nicole, too, did not see that coming as she bit her lips and looked dimly at Harvey. "Lulu, let's go." Lulu was a little confused. Harvey had already helped her and Nicole get the table, so why should they go? However, seeing Nicole's expression, Lulu did not say much. Harvey saw Nicole was really leaving, and his expression froze a little. He had only wanted to test her, but he did not expect her reaction to be so big. Harvey once again regretted his rashness as he looked at Nicole and said, "Sorry, Nicole. I couldn't help it." Everyone in the cafeteria looked at this scene in shock. Harvey has always been so perfect, so high and mighty, and now he is apologizing to Nicole, a total nobody. Everyone gawked as they looked at the scene, and those few gangster girls turned their eyes on Nicole, brimming with jealousy and resentment. What right does Nicole have to be treated like this by Harvey? Everyone thought that Nicole would forgive him. After all, no one could reject an apology so sincere from Harvey. Yet however, Nicole's face became even colder as she gave Harvey a cold glance. His apology was simply just to push her into the cusp of his grasp again. She did not even look back as she turned and left the cafeteria. Harvey's face was as pale as a ghost as he looked at Nicole's departing figure, a cold glint flashing past his eyes. So close, it was so close for him to be able to naturally sit down with Nicole and have a meal with her. However, it did not matter. Harvey smiled at everyone in the cafeteria and casually left the place. Lulu followed behind Nicole as she whispered, "Nicole, what's the deal with you and Harvey?" It seemed like Harvey really cared about Nicole. Nicole frowned. Even Lulu felt that away. There were probably plenty in school who were blinded by what Harvey did. Others may not know, but she knew Harvey's freakish desire for control very well. To him, she was probably an extremely unstable factor that was beyond his control. That was why he was trying so hard to get her to listen to him. Just like Snow. When she thought of this, Nicole sneered. Being that Lulu also missed her lunch because of her, Nicole patted the latter's fluffy face as Che said, "I'll treat you to a meal outside, okay?" Lulu's eyes lit up. "I've long wanted to eat out. Today's a blessing in disguise. I guess there's no need for you to treat me, Nicole. I'll pay today." Nicole looked at her with a smile as the two walked out of the school. Unexpectedly, just as Nicole and Lulu walked out of the school, they were stopped by a tall guy with many people behind him. They were Kane and his goons. Lulu was so terrified her face turned pale. After all, Kane was well known in this area, and no one dared to mess with him. It was just that he got beaten up by someone in the past few days and was hospitalized. Now that he was out of the hospital, he probably came straight to find trouble with Nicole. It was noon, and there were quite a few people near the cafeteria. All of them saw Kane stopping Nicole, and they immediately started whispering to one another as they stood there to watch the show. The daughter of the Rowe family had been absent for a few days now, and it must have been Nicole's work. "Look, isn't her boyfriend here to seek revenge? Kane is a beast you do not want to poke. He is afraid of no one other than Gary, and even Austin is nothing to him. Nicole's gonna pay today. She deserves it. Let her do the same to Harvey." When Snow and Rain heard Harvey was coming to the cafeteria, they planned to wait nearby to try their luck to see if they could see him, not expecting that they would run into this scene. Rain gloated and shouted in a loud voice, "Nicole, you now got your karma for bullying Celia. Beg me, and I may put in some good words for you. You know, Celia is a good friend of mine and my sister's. Her boyfriend might spare you for the sake of us. Kane, you shouldn't hold grudges against Nicole simply because she bullied Celia a few times. After all, Nicole doesn't know any better, but you all are different." Everyone agreed with what the two said. Snow was so good-hearted that she evil with good despite what Nicole had done to her. What Rain said might be nasty, but I will make sense. It was Nicole who started all this. Nicole was nonchalant, not even sparing a glance at the people around her. Instead, she looked with icy eyes at Kane, who had been sort of her old acquaintance. Kane, who was tall with a fleshy face, stood there and looked up to no good. He had been beaten so badly that he had to be carried to the hospital before this. How dare he stand in her way now? As Nicole looked at Kane with frosty eyes, Kane seemed to see Nicole's hostility and frantically waved his hand to tell her he was not here to fight. He hesitantly took a few steps forward and then took out a black box from behind him. "I'm sorry, Nicole. My girlfriend and I apologize for offending you. Please accept this as a token of apology and let the matter rest." Everyone, including Snow and Rain, was stunned to see what unfolded before their eyes. How could this be? Should Kane not teach Nicole a lesson? Unbeknownst to them was that Kane had secretly taught Nicole a lesson and ended up in the hospital that day. Celia wanted to avenge him, and before she could do anything, she met Jared and had been afraid to go to school for almost a week. She told her boyfriend about it, and neither of them dared to offend Jared. The best way forward was to make peace with Nicole. What they did not know was that the seemingly indifferent Nicole was actually friendlier than Jared was. Kane was still suffering from the mental trauma of what had happened to him that day. When he looked at Nicole in front of him, he could still feel pain in his lower abdomen and fractured right leg. Everyone watched in surprise. Nicole did not speak while the big guy, Kane, looked timid in front of Nicole as he handed out the black box with trembling hands. Nicole looked at Kane and still said nothing, while the surprised Lulu walked past him and left. Kane had no clue if Nicole had forgiven him. He could only follow her quietly while his followers were at least 10 meters away, as they all did not want to get too close to Nicole. They could still vividly remember how painful it was to be beaten by Nicole. Nicole was no slouch in fighting. Her every punch and kick were precise and hit them in the most vulnerable spots. She became a nightmare for them, so much so that they were even afraid to get close to her. Rain was stunned to see Kane cowering before Nicole. It made what she had said just now feel like a slap in her face. She stomped her feet in anger, spun away, and left, as she no longer wanted to waste time waiting for Harvey with Snow. It was so humiliating. The stares of others made her feel ashamed of herself. She was suffering from humiliation as much as her arrogance. Snow did not care if her sister had left. She just stood there looking at Nicole from behind, deep in thought. Snow could not have been clearer about Nicole's background. The Riddle family might have a long history, but it had long passed its glory and could no longer be a deterrence for Kane. Something else must have made Kane feel so afraid. She furrowed her brows in thought, not even noticing that Harvey had walked past her. A thought came to mind when Harvey saw Snow. He suddenly changed direction and walked toward her. "What has just happened, and why are you standing here, Snow?" A twinkle of surprise flashed across her eyes when Snow saw Harvey. But she felt a little curious at Harvey's question. Could Harvey not know what had just happened earlier had something to do with Nicole, and so he had to ask her? But she quickly dismissed this idea and told Harvey what she had just seen. Hearing what she said, Harvey still had a smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. He then walked toward the school gate. Just as she wanted to catch up with him, Harvey shot a look back at her. That kind of icy look was something she had never seen before in his eyes. She stopped in her tracks. Snow had been like a staunch believer who had been running toward the sun, but now the sun was no longer shining hot for her. She was at a loss and could not accept it. Hatred in her eyes gradually crept up. Harvey seemed indifferent to everything about her when he returned this time. But she gritted her teeth at the thought of Karen's advice. Soon it would be the weekend, the time when Karen would come and question her about how she and Harvey were going. But she did not know how to tell Karen that in just a week, Harvey had become indifferent to her. Snow had let go of her ego and accompanied Rain to meet Harvey today. She was thinking of having a pleasant conversation with him, not expecting that Harvey had asked only a few questions about Nicole and then left just like that. Blue veins popped up on her hand, tugging at the corner of her clothes as she slowly walked away with her head lowered to avoid others from seeing her expression. Nicole was walking in front, followed by a large group of people. She wished they could leave her alone so that she could enjoy her meal with Lulu quietly. She glanced back at Kane and saw him looking at her with flattering eyes. Nicole narrowed her eyes and said, "Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you again." Her stern glare scared the daylights out of Kane. As desperate as he wanted to flee, he did not forget to pass the box to Lulu with a smile and said, "Please help me pass it to Nicole." He was too scared to hand the thing to Nicole directly, but he would not feel at ease and could not answer her girlfriend if he did not hand the gift to Nicole. So, he made a compromise and passed the thing to Lulu. Kane then beckoned with his hand to bring his followers to leave. Nicole looked around. Kane had almost followed the two of them to the school gate, and almost the entire school had seen Kane's flattering face. She felt a slight headache at the thought of this. Nicole did not like too much attention to herself, but somehow, she always got it. Lulu took the box, hesitating whether to return it. But when she saw Nicole's calm face, she calmly shoved the things into Nicole's arms. "Here you go. It is from him." Nicole did not even look at it, and she shoved it back into Lulu's school bag. "Since he gave it to you, it is yours then." There was no more grudge between them since she had accepted the thing. That was why she did not drive Kane away when he handed the thing over. Nicole gently patted Lulu on the head and said, "Let's get something to eat." The school gate was near the cafe. Just when passing by the cafe, Nicole casually glimpsed inside, not expecting to see anything. Yet she saw Jared lazily leaning against the window. Sitting across from him was a beautiful woman with red lips and wavy hair. The two seemed to be chatting about something, and then the woman stood up, seemingly agitated, and wanted to walk over to Jared. Nicole stopped looking at this point and continued to walk forward as she was not interested in peeking into the private affair of others. Lulu, walking next to Nicole, shivered all of a sudden. She then looked up at the sky in puzzlement. It was early fall, and the weather was not too cold. Yet Lulu was shivering as if in the winter, the air temperature continuing to plummet. "The weather is becoming unpredictable. I have to wear an extra layer of coat when I get home. By the way, do you feel cold, Nicole?" Nicole slowed down and looked up at the sky, then said with a straight face, "Not at all." Lulu looked at her in bafflement. She keenly sensed that something was wrong with Nicole's mood but could not tell why because nothing special had happened just now. With this understanding in mind, Lulu said, "Don't worry. The monthly exam is still over a week away, and I believe you will perform well." Nicole did not refute what Lulu said but continued to listen. Only that she kept her head low to conceal the look in her eyes. She wondered what that feeling was. It upset her so much. Harvey made a phone call when he reached the school gate. "I've arrived. Where are you?" Soon, a man got out of a red Lamborghini parked outside the school gate, waving at Harvey with a somewhat gloomy expression on his face. The man was Sean, who had been by Mr. Rogers Sr.'s side yesterday. A faint smile crept across Harvey's face as he gracefully walked toward Sean. The two then quickly got into the car and headed out of the city. "Christopher has stopped so low lately that my father would soon find out." "Harvey, what do you say we should do next?" Sean asked anxiously in the car. He was the opposite of Christopher. He wanted Mr. Rogers Sr. to live a long life, not only to protect him but also to get some actual power from the Rogers family when he got older. Harvey was patient. He looked out the window at the leaves that were gradually turning yellow on the branches. It was destined to be an eventful fall. "Hold your horses," he said softly. "We will live longer than those people. Don't lose your patience. Just wait." Sean seemed to have thought of something and was not as anxious as before after hearing what Harvey had said. "Do you know the girl that the old man brought in yesterday?" Sean asked as he drove. Harvey turned his eyes back to Sean. "Why?" Sean shook his head. "Nothing. Just that there is more to her than meets the eyes. Your father didn't even let me see the gift that she gave to him yesterday." Sean gripped the steering wheel tighter. "And she seemed to know the problem with my father and hinted something to him, a bit earlier than the time you asked me to speak. Would it affect anything?" Harvey started to make sense of something and chuckled. "Nicole, you always have surprises for me." He then looked up and whispered to Sean, "Don't worry about her." Again, knowing that Harvey did not want to tell him more. The car drove around and reached Great Oak at last. Harvey and Sean got out of the car and headed for the only sanatorium in town. The doctors and nurses were already accustomed to their visit and only required a routine registration from them before letting them in. The small sanatorium had only 3 floors and no elevator. The two slowly climbed to the top floor and pushed open a door in room 312. There was a doddering middle-aged man inside. He looked skinny, his hair thin and gray, looking as if he was very old. Wearing an oversized hospital gown and sitting on the bed, he looked out the window, sometimes laughing at himself, looking neurotic. Harvey and Sean walked in tandem and then stood by his bedside and looked at the man with knife-like eyes as if they could penetrate the man's head. "Will you still not tell me, will you?" Harvey said as he pulled over a chair and sat down next to the man. The light in his eyes had completely faded, and they now looked as dark as the abyss. When the man saw Harvey, he was so frightened that he tried to hide under the bed, but Sean grabbed him and lifted his bony body back to the bed. "I'm running out of patience, my dear teacher." Harvey's smile looked unusually gentle. Nicole and Lulu found a fondue restaurant and had a meal comfortably. By the time they came out of the restaurant, Lulu happily rubbed her little belly and said to Nicole, "I feel as if we have just been out of jail. How about we come again next time, Nicole? Bring June and Bradley along." Nicole looked at her with a smile in her eyes. "Why not?" Lulu looked at Nicole, feeling curious. "Don't you think it's not as cold as before?" Nicole did not reply. Lulu was used to talking to herself, so she did not mind. "This year is indeed going to be colder than usual. Keep yourself warm, Nicole." Lulu looked at Nicole with concern. Nicole always wore a simple t-shirt with a coat and a pair of comfortable loose wide-leg pants. It was a casual mix and match fashion, but it looked great on Nicole. Nicole was tall but not thin, her slightly curly hair cascading down her shoulders, making her look deadly lazy. Lulu had just wanted to see how much Nicole was wearing, but she was completely immersed in it. As a girl, she also thought Nicole was great-looking. No wonder Harvey was irresistibly attracted to Nicole. Nicole looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "I will." It took Lulu a while to realize what Nicole meant. She would keep herself warm. Lulu could not help but cackle. "What a reflex arc, Nicole." Nicole said nothing but gave her an elegant, haughty look. The two cackled as they walked to the school gate. Lulu planned to go back to the dormitory to study. Nicole thought for a moment and decided to go to the cafe. She had agreed to give Austin and company tuition this afternoon. When Nicole came in front of the cafe, she somehow hesitated. She wondered why she suddenly had such an awkward feeling, which had never occurred to her before. Claus inside the cafe had already spotted Nicole and came out to greet her with a smile. But Nicole seemed to have spaced out as if she did not see him. What a surprise. Claus scratched his chin, not expecting to see Nicole woolgathering. Jared was not on the ground floor. Claus looked at Nicole and took out his phone to call Jared. "Boss, Nicole is here, but she is not coming in. I think something is wrong." Jared also saw Nicole coming at the window on the first floor. He was in the room watching Nicole because their last encounter did not go well yesterday. He was motionless just as long as she remained rooted to the spot. Max stood beside him, not actually knowing what his boss was doing. After hanging up the phone, and a few more minutes had passed, Nicole was still standing where she was as if pondering something. But Jared had lost his patience. He murmured angrily about something and then got downstairs. He had been expecting Nicole. A glacier seemed to have formed in Jared's amorous eyes, his expression so cold as if it could freeze time. When he came downstairs, he had eye to eye with Nicole, who happened to look up through the glass door. Nicole looked at the man on the opposite side of the door. He was wearing a black silk shirt, his artistic arched black eyebrows making his skin look fairer than he was. He remained standing on the bottom few steps of the staircase at that moment, leaning obliquely on the railing, but it made him look even more charming, with a bit of extreme elegance. Nicole looked at him as if suddenly understanding why so many people came to the cafe every day to chat with him. Now, with no hesitation, she pushed open the door and walked up to Claus. "Give me a glass of iced Americano." She needed to sober up. Nicole then walked slowly toward the stairs and gently said to Jared, who was staring at her, "Excuse me." Max, who was following Jared hurrying downstairs, happened to hear this, and his heart skipped a beat. "Sorry." Jared had no expression on his face. With that, he walked out the door without looking back. Nicole kept walking up the stairs and came to the room where she usually gave Austin and company tuition. She waited there, looking as if being deep in thought. When Austin and his buddies came and saw Nicole sitting by herself, Sammy said, "Boss, why didn't Jared accompany you today?" "Accompany me?"
In their eyes, has it always been Jared who accompanies me? She asked in her mind. Sammy saw something was wrong with Nicole and became concerned. Are you alright, boss?
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.